Welcome back to the Sweat Elite podcast, an episode of Training Talk with Luke and Matt. Luke's just under 7 weeks till Chicago Marathon. I'm just building back into shape after taking a long break. I'm just over a month back in. Luke, I'm excited to speak to you because you are at the peak of your volume. You've hit, well, maybe not peak, but at least the biggest week you've done for a while, 100 miles last week. We'll go into all the finer details over on the other podcast, but you told me during the week that you feel like an MMA fighter. So do you want to explain that a little bit more before we dive into the training?
Yeah, yeah. I said it to you during the week, and then I said it out loud, and I was like, "Oh, that kind of sounds. It almost sounds cocky in a way, but it's like it just kind of made sense to me." So what I mean by that is, Matt was for those listening. Matt was asking me how training's going, and we touch base with each other throughout the week anyway. And I was telling him that. So I watch. I've always been into martial arts, like boxing and MMA specifically. And I kind of feel like one of those guys, like a boxer or an MMA fighter that's in the middle of a fight camp. And what I mean by that is when those guys are in those camps, specifically with sparring, like sparring rounds, they'll go like 10, 12 heavy rounds, just going. They won't do it a lot. That's like a marathon simulation workout for them. They'll do it every now and again. But when they do that in training, they'll often have fresh guys. So they'll do the 10, 12 rounds because it's their fight, but they'll have a guy start off maybe one, two, maybe 3 rounds. And then after that, they'll pull him and put in a fresh guy. 1, 2, 3 rounds, pull him, fresh guy, and keep doing that. So like
So
the
you've got all these
fighter,
guys lined up?
huh?
You've got all these guys lined up there in Houston that's dropping in
So
now?
So yeah, I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like I'm just like beating the hell out of these guys. But I just mean like, I'm doing these really big weeks, big session on Tuesday, double threshold on a Thursday, marathon workout on a Saturday. And the lads I'm running with, like none of them will do all of it with me. Like obviously, understandably, they don't have a marathon in October. Like I think the closest marathon any of them have is Houston, like January. So it's so far away. So it would make no sense that they would do all of it. But they're coming in like I'll do like, Chris and Mark and Brandon on the Tuesday, they will all be together. And then on the Thursday, maybe one of them or two of them for the morning session, then maybe the other one for the evening session, and then the long one workout, and it keeps kind of chopping and changing. And so they're a bit more fresh than me, but I'm still like going through, sticking with them, at times dropping them at like, and so it's like it's interesting. I thought about that the other day, just like the chopping and changing of the guys that are coming with me. And I was like, man, I kind of feel like a boxer or something here. This is weird. But no, it was, and it's like, I don't know. It's kind of a fun way to think about it too. Like I do that often with myself. Like I like do these like I don't know if you want to call them mental games or whatever, but just think of training and sessions like differently, just to kind of get a different mindset so it's not stale and boring. And when I thought about that, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, I kind of like
Mm.
this. Like I know Chris didn't do it the last 2 sessions with me. I know he's going to be fresh. And so but he's still fit. Do you know what I mean? Like they're all still fit. So they have like the best of both worlds. Whereas I'm like, I'm fit, but I'm at the stage where I'm getting kind of beat up. So I'm like, all right, I gotta stick with them. I got like, and they're not gonna cut me any slack. They're not there, you know, for my workout. They're not like, oh, come on, Luke, this is they're trying to get fit too. So they're gonna want to try and drop me. And so it's fun. It keeps it fun.
So I'm probably pretty straightforward, but how do you arrange to always tie in with other people in training? Do you have like a group chat full of people that you would tell, this is what I'm doing, and anyone else wants to join in? And okay, so that sounds like it's a yes. And then on top of that, are you the one setting the plan and everyone's joining in with you, or is there a bit of both? Are other people setting the plan and you're going, oh, that suits me, and change the workout? Like trying to go into that a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes it's both. Usually the last couple of weeks it's been Mark will usually text, what's the workout? I'll text my workout and the rest of them like, all right, cool, see you there. And that's how it's been. Like it's
Yeah.
really as laid back as that. Like, and if it's the other way around, if like they have a race and I have a race far away and they're like, oh, we're doing this, like I'll be like, all right, cool as well. Like usually most of the time, there's a few lads that are a bit more picky in particular, but most of the time it's just like okay, hard session, run with the lads, run hard, get fit, don't overthink it, and
Yeah,
it seems to work out for all of us, most of us, anyway.
that's awesome. We'll dive into all the details of what Luke's doing in training, including double threshold work over on the private podcast feed that will be after this one. We'll explain more about how to sign up for that at the end of the podcast. Luke, we got a bunch of questions, a fresh round of questions off the back of an Instagram story I put up a few weeks ago. These are a little bit, maybe a little bit trickier questions to answer, perhaps. At least I sort of read them and thought to myself, even though they sound quite basic, some of them are, they don't have very straightforward answers, some of them. And we'll give you our best answer to the following seven questions. Look, the first one is one that is, I think, pretty controversial. Maybe not controversial is the right word, but just one that there's lots of different opinions about this. It's a very, very
Polarizing.
simple one, and it's one that often people don't really talk about as well. We talk a lot about the actual, workouts, and we talk about this pace means we can run this pace at this speed and all that, but we don't often talk about running form, especially on this podcast. And I don't hear a lot of podcasts that talk about it, but R Tenzin asks, does a specific running form matter? Very vague question, like very broad question, not vague, quite broad. What is your best answer to that question?
My answer would be the most lawyer answer ever. It depends. Um, and so what I mean by that is it depends who's asking it. First of all, like, are you someone that's brand new to running? Like you're starting from zero, like you've never run before in your life, you're just starting, then maybe it could be something worth investing in if you have, there's definitely people and apps and doctors and all sorts that will help you out with that. Like just Google it, and there's so many people that will take your money to try and change your running form, right? I assume it's not someone like that. If it's not, if it's someone like, certainly someone like you that's been running for, has an actual running background, a good running background, I would say no. And like anything in between for the most part, I would say no. And the reason I would say no is because, when you're looking at running form, I think you're mainly looking at how to run more efficiently, right? That's the main thing you're looking for. You look at, some of those. Do you know who I love? Clayton Young. Look at some of his videos. His form is fantastic. Like, and you can tell though, it looks like he's worked on his form. Like it doesn't look super natural either. Like his chest is out, way out. He's got the chicken wing arms,
Hmm.
like perfect for a marathon. And his stride, it almost looks like it looks great, but it almost looks like he has purposefully worked on it at some point in his career. I could be dead wrong. And that's just naturally how he runs, which would be crazy. Because it looks so perfect to the point where it's almost manicured. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yep.
Um, but that's a perfect marathon specific running form, just very efficient. He's wasting no energy. Um, and so that's really what it's about, right? But if you're coming from, my running form is far from perfect. Like if you watch any videos from me, but I feel like I'm not losing efficiency or speed or anything like that. So why would I waste, and I think it would be a waste, a lot of time and effort and money to change it for little to very, very, very minimal gains. I really do think they would be minimal. If I
Hmm.
sat down with one of these experts, quote unquote, and tried to change it, that would be one way. The other way would be injury risk. If your form is so janky and so messed up that you know, unbeknownst to you, you're actually getting a lot of injuries. And then you talk to someone and they change your form, and then you actually start feeling better. Then, of course, but it's so hard to figure out if you're getting a lot of injuries because of your form. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of your form. And do you want to spend all that money? Do you want to, like, what I would just say to that person is just, is it worth it? Is it worth the investment? Do you really think only you can answer that question? That's the main question. Is it worth it? Do I really think I could make massive gains here to where I would have to, because you'd have to spend money. There's no one going to be able to help you fix your form for free. I don't think you'd be able to do it the right way on your own by looking at Google and watching guys run. And I
I've
really
never
do
heard of
think
anyone doing that. Yeah. I
No,
mean, I've
you
heard of
really
people I've heard of people initially setting out to try to do it, but they sort of run out of interest and motivation very quickly.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I've been in that boat before many, many years ago when
Uh,
I first, yeah.
so you'd have to ask, is it worth it? And if it is, you have the money, you have the time, and you really think so, then go for it. But I personally wouldn't recommend it for the large majority of runners. And then also have a look at, I said Clayton Young's running form is beautiful. Look at his training partner. That is 10 times better than him. The most shocking running form I've ever seen in my life. Conor Mann's. He's got knock knees. His knees literally go like that with every stride. And every stride he runs looks like he's at a full sprint. It looks like he's gonna die. And he just never does. Never does. Like his form is so bad and he's unbelievable, you know? And so should he change his running form?
Mm.
You know, there's no doubt he's going to break the American record in the marathon. He's already broken it in the half. He's going to do probably some crazy shit at the Olympics. He might medal for all we know, like how good he is. But his form is not good. Like I'm probably over exaggerating saying it's like the worst ever, but it's really not good. Like, you know what I mean? There's so
Oh
many
yeah.
pros out that are just their
No,
form is
it's not smooth at all when he runs. It's not beautiful to
no,
watch like Clayton Young.
no, no. I
There's
don't know.
quite a lot of examples of very high level runners that have huge deficiencies in their form. And one very famous one is Paula Radcliffe, who held the
Yeah.
the world record for the marathon, for women's marathon up until 2019, I think, 2:15. And she, like, all the top running coaches and running, form coaches say that you should have your head in a straight line and it should be moving. Whereas she was just had this bobbing head that was just
Yeah.
all over the shop. And anyone watching her would be like, why don't you try and address that? You'd certainly be much more efficient. But how do you argue with someone running 2:15 in
The world
2001?
record.
So it's like,
Yeah.
mm. I mean, there's not a
Yeah.
lot of examples of them. Like most professional runners do have pretty good form,
Yeah.
but I think you nailed it with that answer, to be honest. I couldn't have said that any better. Mm. Sam Gettings asks, how to make sure you don't peak too early? This is a good question. I feel like a lot of coaches wouldn't know the answer to this, even though it's not a very clear one. What do you got, Luke?
Yeah, I looked at this question. I missed the question before. Matt sent me the questions. I missed the question before, so that was a lot of waffle. Even hopefully it was helpful though. But this one I really thought about because I think it's a tough one. You know, it's a good problem to have. Don't get me wrong. You know, when you feel like you're peaking, but am I peaking too early? But it can be a problem. And so, I was thinking about it and I took some notes and I'd say, so starting off, I think it's important in your cycle, right? If you're going to peak too soon, I think you're the type of person that's looking at like a 12 to 16 week cycle, right? Anything less than that, you're not going to run into that issue. But if you're one of those people that likes a big, big cycle, you'll probably run into it, right? So I'd say at the beginning of those, say 12 to 16 weeks, you know, you want to think about what do you do at the end of at the end of your marathon cycle. You do big things like say a 10-mile or 12-mile marathon simulator tempo, right? Where you're doing 10 to 12 miles at like marathon pace, feeling great, right? So that's at the end of it. So there's no way you're going to do anything like that, even remotely close to that, for the first like 6 to 8 weeks. But what you can do is you can do bite-sized chunks of those things. You can turn that 10-mile marathon simulator into like a 4 or 5 mile, right? And do sessions like that, smaller sessions at the beginning, but instead at the end of the cycle where you're doing marathon pace, you're locking in, you're trying to go 2:29:59, right? You're trying to break 2:30. Your pace is going to be 5:42 per mile, right?
Mm.
That's what you're going to lock in to your 10-mile tempo at the end. At the beginning, everything should be marathon effort. Even if it's 40-degree day with no wind, perfect, still marathon effort. And you should know what that is. And if you don't, just keep practicing what it's like to feel like at the beginning of a marathon. It should be so smooth and so easy. So lock into that at the beginning and try so hard. I know it's so much easier said than done, but try so hard to keep that effort. and don't worry so much about the pace. The pace will come. Like it just will with consistency. It always does. Um, so that's what I would say at the beginning. And then I would say also at the beginning and less so towards the end. At the beginning, you have those smaller marathon type workouts. Still keep some of those VO2 sessions in there too, if you can, at the beginning. I would say sprinkle those in at the beginning too. You know, big kind of efforts where you're going, 5K and below, closer to mile pace, 200s, 400s. Don't make it massive reps, obviously, because you still don't want to kill yourself, but like 400s, fast 400s, fast 200s, fast 600s with with a lot of rest. Don't be worrying about having, ripping 400s on 30 seconds rest. That comes later. A lot of rest, but fast turnover where your legs are spinning, you're feeling fast, you're feeling sharp, and then that sharpness will then turn. And then as it goes on later in the build, then you get into more of your marathon specific sessions where you're doing those, 10 by K off a minute rest. That comes later after about 6 to 8 weeks, and then do your normal stuff. So that's how I would do it. And then in terms of the long runs with that stuff, obviously don't overcook your long runs. Keep your long runs the whole way, but make sure you're progressing so steadily. Like the first 4 to 6 weeks at least should be just about time on feet.
Mm.
Don't even worry about pace. Don't worry about, stop to get water if it's hot, all that stuff. Just time on feet. Getting miles in, getting time on feet in. 2 hours building up to 2:15, 2.5 hours if you can manage it. And then after a few weeks, start sprinkling in those steady state runs or some like light progressions. First 10 miles is easy. Then you progress, 10 seconds per mile faster for the next few miles, stuff like that you're used to. Then the last, I'd say, 6 weeks or so, give or take, 6 to 8 weeks, 6 weeks probably for most people. Then you bring in those marathon simulation workouts, 4x5K, 2x10K, simulate practice fueling while you're on the move, stuff like that. Um, keep that later, later, later. And then trying to think, what else was I thinking? Yeah, I mean, I think like that's a lot of it. And just always at the beginning as well. This will be the last thing I'll say, and I'll let you go. At the beginning, check-ins on yourself mentally and physically, I feel like are so important at the beginning, especially. Like make sure at those first few 6 to 8 weeks, you're not sacrificing sleep, you're not sacrificing um fuel and nutrition. Do all the things to look after your body. Later on in the build, obviously do it the whole build. But later on the build, if you have to sacrifice things, then it's later when you're fit, when you've built up a good bit of fitness. But you start sacrificing those things early on, your body's never going to be able to play catch up. You're just not, and you're going to dig yourself into a hole. So yeah, that'd be the last thing I'd say in terms of not peaking too soon.
I think you nailed it once again. I don't have much more to add there. Everything that I was thinking was basically has been said there. So yeah, well done. Michael GH running asks, been struggling to get into that flow state, primal killer instinct mindset for races. Do you have any advice? This is a common thing, I think. I think it can come in a lot of different ways. I'll just quickly say a couple of probably things that are relatively obvious. I think one, I notice people that get stuck into this phase are often just doing their easy days too hard. That's a very, very simple one. I've noticed that plenty of times. I've noticed people that I coach, sometimes they turn up to races and they just don't quite feel like they can squeeze everything out of the race. They don't quite feel like they're really excited and really motivated to line up. And that can come and go due to a lot of things. But I think keeping your easy days really easy is one pretty simple way of working in the right direction there because it's very difficult to turn up to a race or turn up to any workout and just really give it your all if you're just constantly feeling like you're grinding in training. And yeah, I concluded a while ago that I really don't think that there's such thing as running too slow in training. I think like mechanically it can be a little bit of an issue if you're jogging really slowly all the time. It's just so different to your running form when you're striding out. So I think, mixing it up and doing some really easy days and other days that is maybe a little bit closer to your goal paces, but nowhere near them. I think that's a really easy one. I think looking at your sleep and looking at your stress is another big factor as well. If you're stressed at work and you're stressed at home, I know that's not easy to deal with, and there's lots of different caveats to that, but that's a huge one. I think if you can figure out how to manage that better, that'll almost certainly bring back a little bit of drive to squeeze everything out of a race. Luke, you got any more?
Yeah, those are all perfect. I would definitely echo all that. I think of, but when I do think of like getting that killer instinct as well, I think of a runner that's kind of like they're almost doing all the right things until it comes to the hard sessions. And it's almost like they've kind of checked out, either because their race is too far away or they're not feeling 100% or whatever else. So if you're not feeling 100%, then all the things that Matt just said will sort 99% of that out. No problem. If it's the other thing and you're just kind of checked out, like you're doing all the other right things, but for some reason you just can't get that next gear. I think one thing that really helps, don't do it all the time, but it helps sometimes, especially if you have a good group of lads, like just like fucking pressure test it. You know what I mean? Like get lads, especially that are faster than you, and just like kind of race them a little bit in the workout. Like I know you're not supposed to do it a lot, but everyone does it every now and again. Especially if you have lads that are like good runners and really competitive, you know? You tell a few lads like, all right, we're gonna do a 4 mile tempo. We're gonna keep it around 5:30 pace. But if you kick on the first rep and dip down into the 5:20s, those lads aren't going to be like, hey, slow down. They're going to be like, all right, fuck you, let's go. Like, let's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, they just will.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do it every workout. You don't want to be that guy. No one, no one, but do it every now and again. Um, of course, it'll help if you tell them, like, hey, like, let's race the last mile or something like that. But sometimes it's better not to. Sometimes it's better to just do it. And or the other way, get guys that are faster than you, and they'll say like, "Oh, hey, I'm doing a 4 mile tempo. I'm gonna go like 5:25s," and that might be a bit hot for you. Say you wanted 5:30s, but just say, "Do you know what? I'm gonna stay like let you go, but then I'll stay as connected as I can, and then I'll try and catch you, towards the end." Do that every now and again. Like you might blow up. Chances are you'll blow up, but who gives a shit? That happens in a race too. If anything, it'll definitely kick you out of that funk. Like if you have someone to chase, if someone's chasing you, if you turn it up a notch for a lap or two and lads start chasing you, start rubbing shoulders with you and trying to outkick you, that's definitely going to get you out of that funk and get you going again. So I'd say try that if you're lucky enough to have a good group that you can
Yeah.
run with. Um, if you don't, and you're only doing it by yourself, just do that in workouts if you can. Like say if you have like 10 by a K and you normally do it, say your threshold is like 320 a K, right? And you're running 320, 320. Maybe the fourth one, just fucking like the second lap, just drop like a hard lap. Just like fuck it. And just pretend like, go to a public track and there's people around. There's some dude or some chick ahead of you, like 200 meters away, and be like, fuck it, I'm gonna catch him. And just fucking go. And then the next rep, go back to 320, 320. And then maybe the third, like the seventh or eighth rep, fucking do it again. And just, don't do it to the point where you're cooking yourself. Don't do it like all the time, but just every now and again, just do it. I think that really helps for stuff like
I,
that.
li- I like it. Next question from your man, Matt Persick. Why no hill sprints in training yet? He's obviously referring to me here because you have re-added them into your training. I want to hear more about that in a minute. Yeah, when I first got back from Japan and I went for a run, I honestly was like that run on July 23, it shocked me to just for some strange reason I had no idea, one, how unfit I'd be, and two, how mechanically awkward and just very yeah, awkward. I would be running. I've got a video of it. My mum I ran out the front of my mum's apartment, which has got a long path along the Broadwater here on the Gold Coast. She's got a video of me, and it looks like I am just hobbling, like I've just come out of surgery with some rods in my back or something. It's absolutely bizarre, and I still don't feel mechanically like I'm anywhere near where I was. I'm still feeling like I did some strides the other day on Saturday. I did 20 by 20 seconds, and you know, beforehand, I would be able to do them easily at 4 minute mile pace for 20 seconds or three 230 a K. And it'd feel easy and smooth. That'd be a breeze. But like I was running closer to like 430, 435, 245, 250 a K in these short 20-second sprints. And I felt like I was mechanically just like all over the place. I felt like really awkward. And I think to answer the question specifically, Matt, I think I need to get back to feeling like I'm smooth and just running normally first. And for some reason, in my mind, my gut feeling says that that will come with just showing up and jogging and easy running and steady running more. And then I think I'll work into it. I almost feel like if I started to do hill sprints straight away, I feel like I would injure myself. Feel like I would have a high risk of hamstring tear just because I'm so raw. I think I need to start off with the non-intense, more slower, easy running first and then work up to that. So I think I'll be at hill sprints in probably about 8 weeks or something like that. What do you think?
Do you think adding in strides now might help that? So you don't have the added,
I think so.
you're pushing up the hill and yeah, you can feel a bit awkward. Do you think just dead flat, 20 seconds strides, like close to what, mile pace?
I think that's definitely what I need more of. Not just I think there's a big difference. There is a big difference between doing strides and doing all out sprints. They're
Yeah.
quite different on the body, on the central nervous system, just generally. Strides will take out, especially if you're well trained aerobically, they won't take a lot out of you. Whereas hill sprints, I've got an athlete that I coached this week that threw in hill sprints for the first time on Friday. And his long run, he was actually struggling towards the end of his long run, and he feels like it was just due to the 5 20-second hill sprints because it's the first time he did them. So they can take a bit out of you. And so yeah, I think that's the best answer I've got for now. But I do think keeping it. I did on Saturday. I decided to do a workout that 20 by 20 seconds, basically just at about mile effort, and I'll definitely continue to do that. Yeah, it's good to see you've been keeping up your strides as well.
Yeah, man, I love it. Like I feel weird now if I finish an easy run and I don't do them, It
Yeah,
feels kind of off. And I especially like it. It's weird. I especially like it now where it's like it's hot, but I'm adapted to the heat. So it's
yeah,
like it kind of just have that nice feeling when you're finished, the sweat pumping, and it's like I didn't do a hard workout, so I don't feel cooked, but I'm sweating loads, and it's like I don't know, it's like no, it's a good feeling. I don't know. I like
yeah,
it.
yeah. All right. Hopefully that answers the question, Matt. I think I'll be at Hill Sprints in a couple of months. Firm FEIMD running coach asks, what are your thoughts on Jake Barraclough's massive training volume for improvement? Ran to Japan. Have you
Yeah.
been watching his YouTube? I haven't been watching them all, but he's been getting some big views.
I haven't watched a lot of them recently, but I follow him on Strava and I watch his training closely. And I think I have him on Instagram and I see some of that. And yeah, like someone like that is always going to be polarizing for sure. Because I mean, literally, he's taken the piss. Like his main motto, if you will, is uh, train harder, not smarter. That's obviously going to piss people off. Um, I personally love that philosophy. I do. I love massive, big volume and for those that I'm sure most people know, he's an English lad, moved to Japan, just living their whole way. Like Japanese marathon runners are all kind of about a similar kind of massive volume, big aerobic capacity. That's their kind of way, and he's like really lean to that, like 10 times harder. And what he's gone from what 238 to 216 is PB now,
214.
214.
Hmm.
You know, so
It's also around a
it'd be hard,
63-42 half, which is probably
yeah,
just as good. Yeah.
right. So it'd be hard to say it's not working, but I think the cons would be, yeah, it's working, but it's working for him, right? So when you look at stuff like this, massive volume, massive sessions, consistently massive, no real off weeks or deload weeks or down weeks, very few. Um, is that going to work for most people? The answer is just no. Clearly he has something in him. Like he's a lunatic, first of all, like which is going to help you. But he has something in him genetically that a lot of people don't have in terms of how he can keep up with this tolerance, right? And so that can't be discounted. Uh, you can't get away from that. It's kind of like I feel like it's like so many of those, and I'm not having a go with him for this, but it's like so many of those Instagram influencers that like lift a few weights here and there, and they have like massive abs and stuff, and they're like, yeah, do this, and it's like, mate, the main reason you have bulging abs is genetics. You eat clean and you do all right in the gym, but you don't do anything mental. Do you know what I mean? Like it's mainly because it's genetics. And some people are fooled into like buying a product and buying this because they think they'll have abs like this influencer. And it's not like that. Genetics is a massive thing. And I think a lot of that is going on for him that people, you know, shouldn't discount and need to look into. And then I'd say another thing that it would be a con would be like, how many of those different stimuli is he missing? Is he doing a lot of VO2 sessions? Is he doing a lot of LT work? It seems like a lot of just really big miles, big marathon type sessions. And like is everything else in there? Like, I don't know. You would probably know better than me. Like how much is missing there? Because I know like what'd you say his half marathon is?
63:42. Look, I know exactly what you're asking, but he actually does do quite a lot of shorter, faster sessions
Good.
as
Okay.
well.
Well then, yeah. Okay. So then
Maybe
yeah,
not a
Don.
lot of them, but like I saw him do 8 by a K the other day in 255. I've seen him do some shorter session 400s. I know what you're saying. When you're doing this huge volume, you're probably not making a lot of time for these shorter workouts because in your mind they're not covering enough distance. But I think he does do enough. He's improving over 10K for sure. He ran a 29:40 something on a very slow course recently, and I think he said in his latest video that he thinks he could run 28:30 for 10K. And I mean, he wouldn't. I don't think he'd just say that. I think he's probably pretty close to the mark
No.
on a
Yeah, I don't
track.
think so either.
And so,
No,
if that's the case, yeah, it seems like what he's doing is really improving. I mean, I'm looking at his Strava here. There was a week in the end of July where he did 322 kilometers, which is, I believe that's exactly 200 miles
yeah,
in a
that's
week.
mad. Yeah.
And most of these weeks here are around 250, 260 kilometers, which is about 150 miles. He's got a couple of down weeks here at around 95 miles, 150K. It's obscene. I'm so impressed, so surprised that he hasn't had many or more injuries. And I think a lot of people wonder that. And I wish the best for him. I hope I never wish an injury upon someone, but it's kind of surprising that he's been going for this long, running such. I know he has had a couple of niggles, but he seems to have just like continued running 100 plus miles through the
I
niggles.
think
It's insane.
I think he had a pretty bad injury while you were away. A
Okay.
pretty, or maybe it was like I think it was around yeah, it was after I think I just got back from Japan. It was pretty bad. I want to say it was like a stress reaction or something.
All
It was
right.
pretty bad. And he came back from it pretty fucking quick, if I
Yeah.
remember.
Well, he's
Yeah,
back in awesome shape now.
yeah, and he got back into it, and now he's in great shape again. And like, look, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I just
Yeah.
don't want other people to think that they can do it because they probably can't, right?
Yeah.
He's clearly built differently. That's the main thing I'm saying. He's built differently. But if you do, I do think that his methodology is sound in terms of don't do exactly what he's doing, but in terms of like building a big base like and compounding training like week after week, month after month, year after year specifically, that's gonna like you're gonna see massive gains in the long run.
Mm.
Just constantly. And that's it. That's what he preaches, right? Just showing up day after day, week after week. Not a whole like 99% of what he does is not very sexy. It's just showing up day after day, time after time, run after run. And that's you're gonna see exponential gains if you do that. If you do follow his methodology, I think. Um, I think there's a lot to be said about big volume weeks, and big volume, of course, is subjective, right?
Yep. It looks like he did take basically 2 weeks off at the end of May, early June,
I think that
and
was when he was in.
then at the end of March, he had a few weeks that went right down to only about 25 miles, but he didn't take any weeks off. So I don't know. Yeah. But his last four on Strava here, I'm looking on the desktop, his last 4 weeks average is 269 kilometers, which is right around 160 miles, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
Yeah, look, 162. Yeah, look, he's improving. So, and he's very
he
entertaining to
is.
watch. So I'm not going to critique him. I think it's, yeah, some of his latest videos, I
No,
haven't
yeah,
watched them all,
I'm
but they're
definitely
very
not trying
funny.
to critique him. I'm just trying to like. It seems like this person is interested in maybe copying what he's doing, and I would
Yeah,
just
you
say
got to be very careful about that.
be very careful, very careful.
Yeah. There you go. All right. We've been already on the pod for 35 minutes, so I'll move on to the next one. Perio Runner asks, this is directly to me. Physiology of you being detrained. Is it more so muscles, VO2, neuromuscular, endurance, etc.? Perio, definitely all of the above, but I am I am noticing when I'm running, especially in the last 2 weeks, I feel like my lungs and my cardiovascular or my aerobic capacity, I feel like it's further ahead than my body in a weird way. I feel like my legs and my actual like lactate production and my muscles are limiting me more than my lungs. I've definitely noticed that in the last few workouts. I did a threshold session last week, which we'll dive into on the private podcast feed of 8 by K. And I noticed that I at the end of every kilometer, my heart, I could tell my I know I'm not a big heart rate fan, but I could just sort of just tell my heart rate wasn't super high, but I was just running to threshold feel and my legs just yeah, I just felt that was the threshold feel in my legs, but I was recovering very, very quickly. I was taking 45 seconds rest, and I reckon after 20 seconds rest of every one, I could have gone again. It's a very strange feeling, but it's definitely all of the above. But I can definitely notice that I've just lost so much neuromuscular sort of strength. And I just, yeah, like I've sort of said, I still feel quite awkward and strange running, but it's getting better every day and every week. And I think that in about 2 months, I'll sort of be back to feeling like I'm running relatively smoothly again. I think it's going to take a good, yeah, it's been a little bit over a month. So I think it'll take 3 months. Yeah, VO2, I don't know, like that sort of mixes in the same category as endurance, I guess, if you how you perceive it. But yeah, that's my best answer. It's definitely a physical thing more than a aerobic thing at the moment. Yeah.
Are you doing weights again? Strength training?
Not yet, but I will soon. I just haven't really gotten fully settled apartment wise. I'm in a sort of temporary place now, and I'm not super sure where I'm going to rent another place. And I just want to make sure I get a gym close to it. So, bit of a bad excuse for not starting gym yet, but I will get back into it pretty soon. I don't think I would have started it just yet anyway. I feel like I just need to, like, similar to Matt's question, I feel like I need to add if I add everything at once, gym, hill sprints, I feel like that's a recipe for maybe hurting myself. I think I sort of need to
Yes.
take it one step at a time and just get volume in first, build that base back up, the old classic base word, even though, that's, yeah, easier for me to do given that I've done that so many times before. Yeah, but I'll add sprints and hit and gym in pretty soon. Yeah. Speaking
Nice.
on about gym, are you still in full swing with gym now that you're 6.5 weeks out? Like, how do you? We'll get into the last question in a minute, but are you reducing your gym intensity or overall volume quantity as you build up in mileage and intensity running, or how do you view that?
Yeah. So we kind of talked about it a bit on the training talk maybe last week,
We did.
but yeah, I think I treat it like I do my training in terms of like I want to see improvements when I'm in a marathon block. Like I don't want to just be like, okay, I have these Nordic curls, so just like get through them, and I have this and get through that, and it'll keep me injury free. I want to like up my weight, up the intensity. And I think what's helping me a lot, and I wouldn't recommend this for a lot of people because I think it can cook most people, is I'm doing those high intensity interval classes. Like I have that membership at that gym in Houston called Training Mate, and it's like yeah, it's like all those stereotypical Instagram kind of classes. Um, but man, I love it. Like it's great. Like it's really keeping me honest. Like I'm improving in there week by week. I'm upping my weights, like in exercises that we've done before. I'm making sure like I'm noticing, between each section, I'm noticing that I'm recovering quicker. I'm not needing as much of a break. And um yeah, so it's I mean I just look at it like I said, just kind of like the running. You see those improvements and you want to keep doing it. But do it carefully, right? Especially because it's not the main thing. It's important, but it's not the main thing. So you don't want to cook yourself doing something that's not the main thing. It'd be
Yep.
horrible injury for a race lifting weights. No one wants to do that.
Mm. Last question before we transition over to the other podcast. Rosalot69 asks, do you have trail experience? Tips for marathon runners who are looking to try trail.
I had so much to say about all the other ones. Man, I wouldn't even begin. I feel like if someone knows anything about trail running, I feel like I'd piss them off if I started talking about trail running. That's so foreign to me. Like I looked at all the questions, I looked at that one, and I was like, I mean, I could Google stuff, but I feel like that's even
Yeah.
disrespectful because then I'm Googling shit. Like I really don't know anything about trail running.
Hmm. I mean, I know a little bit, obviously, following some of the professionals like Wormsley and some of the others in his
Well, you
realm.
got
But
way. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but look, I mean, I've coached a few trail runners. I've just started coaching one now from California. I think I wouldn't say I'm an expert in the field, but at the same time, it is a case of, very similar training philosophies around endurance. I think it's just really important this is very obvious, and I'm not going to give you anything magical here, but to train at the right terrain and to get used to that sort of terrain is going to be everything. Like, I'll never forget last year when I was in Flagstaff around May. I went to Flagstaff to do a few videos, and I was pretty fit for myself. And I thought to myself, I'm probably in, I don't know, maybe 30-minute 10K shape. Then I went for a run with Jim Wormsley in Flagstaff. And he warned me beforehand. He said, this is a very, very hilly run. It's straight up for the first couple of miles. It's about 25, 30 minutes, maybe more. And then it's very, very rolling. And I thought, oh, I'll be okay. I'm in pretty good shape. And I had to stop multiple times up the hill for like a good 30 seconds while he's just completely cruising, looking back at me going, why are you so slow? So it's so specific to the actual terrain and training on that. You can't. This is such an obvious answer, but you can't be good at trail without actually spending a lot of time training in the trails. So it's really that simple. On top of that, it's really trying to understand if you're asking more about how to coach for it, it's understand what the athlete has available to them in terms of trails, and then really planning different intervals and different types of workouts in terms of steady state, easy, and so on and so forth on the trails. So I think running's not super complicated to know the basics of physiology and how to improve your endurance, but just doing it on the right surface and terrain is everything there. And there's a lot more we could say to this, but I think that's just the overall one. If you're a marathoner and you want to try and get into trails, I think just starting by doing a whole lot of trail running where you're aiming for, rather than just distance and pace, you're actually not really worrying about pace, but you're aiming for vertical elevation. You're aiming for a certain amount of time uphill and downhill. I think that's one thing that I've learned from Tate, especially, who sort of was with me in the early days of Sweat Elite, who's now over in Europe competing in trail events. He's always looking for elevation gain in runs. So that's a big deal. Yeah. But other than that, yeah, I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means. All right, Luke, we'll go over to the private podcast feed where we talk in detail about our training. We'll go into your double threshold training, your long run on the weekend that went very well, and about where your mind's at moving into 6 weeks to go to Chicago Marathon. And I'm in my 5th week back training. I hit a little bit over 100K last week, even though I'm not shooting for a mileage goal. We'll talk about all those things and much more over on the private podcast feed. You can join us at sweatelite.co/shareholders. It's $10 a month or $99 a year to join. Huge thank you to the supporters over there. You get a private podcast feed every single week. And we will speak to you all next week on this main feed with more answers to more questions. But thank you for tuning in. And Luke and I will be back with you next week.